minutes. Now we need a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
You have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. That motion carries. You have a couple of work session items, Mr. Hadley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The first one, updated on donations. This will be a relatively quick discussion, and that planning for the Arbor Day improvements, I'll call them, in the downtown area. To date, we have approximately $1,500 in donations from the general public. So we sent out solicitations in the utility bills in November, I believe, and since that time we've had, you know, folks writing checks for $25, additionally $50 more, and so it's been pretty widely well received. We do have some businesses that are looking at maybe sponsoring some trees in the downtown area in, say, a quarter block or something, and they're working on that amount that they can actually afford to subsidize for some of our improvements. So we're going to wait to a certain point, and that's probably going to be next month, and see what we have to work with and move forward and finalize a plan for the improvements that we're going to do. The plan right now is to go from on Sims from Villard to First. As you see, you've got a diagram in there, and basically where the yellow highlighted areas are areas where either trees were or we're reintroducing trees in those areas. The goal is to finish, if you haven't noticed, the decorative lighting. The decorative lighting is also a part of this. I have a $16,000 budget for the downtown area for lighting and urban forestry. So any of the donations that we receive basically supplements what I can do. And as we visited before, it's about $1,000 a tree to put in, and that sounds like an astronomical amount, but by the time you take out the concrete, buy the grate, buy the tree, the labor, and everything to put it in, it's about $1,000. And that's with a $250 tree, roughly.
I suppose you would suggest that maybe it would be appropriate that members of this board set an example with a donation to Arbor Day, I suppose.
Mr. Chairman, that's up for you to suggest, yes.
Maybe I shouldn't suggest. Go ahead.
We would like you at the event, though. So the event would be, we had a pretty good showing last year. It was the first time that we've done it. I think the first time the city's done it for a while. There is a lot of interest in it, and there's a lot of desire, I think, to not only continue it in the downtown core, but city overall. I think people, you know, the public works folks are obviously hitting the diseased trees and replacing them throughout the rest of the city. My focus, after visiting with Mr. Kessel, is really to focus on the downtown for now. And, you know, at $16,000 a year, I'm not going to be able to do the downtown tomorrow. But, you know, I think we'll be able to do, I think Sims from Villard to First will be a good indication after, say, midsummer or whenever I can get the electrical done, a good showpiece of what we consider a finished product on the downtown streets. And then we can start moving, you know, beyond that as we go. We ran into a little bit of a snag with the lighting this last fall. The plans in the 90s, I believe, when the downtown improvements showed conduit in locations that would have made it really easy to do the lighting. That conduit doesn't exist. And so we've had to either try to use the MDU conduits or where we can. We do have a feed point, which is a park downtown. Once again, the park downtown is kind of the showcase, if you will, right now of the different kind of light standards that we have and that we're promoting for consistency throughout town. You know, the Downtown Association lit those up. They all have GFIs, so they all can be lit up with decorative lighting for holidays, what have you. So we are kind of planning in advance for the use of those later on. The little house indicators are the next locations for lights. You know, right by the brick house there, that'll be the next one. It's one of the shorter light standards. By the Esquire Club, those two most definitely will be there by this summer. Depending on my funding and how much work we're going to have to do to get those in, we may jump across the street to the post office and do one across from there. But you can see those, and they're still standing. MDU hasn't taken the old ones down yet, so I mean they're kind of a good showcase on what we had and what is coming. And I think it does make a big difference to the perception of folks visiting the downtown, and I think it will be a great improvement. With that, I don't have a lot else to talk about. We are going to do a Walk of Presidents. We'll have a plaque with some of the trees that we put in. So we'll start out with the first president of City of Dickinson and do a Walk of Presidents that will meander through the downtown area. That I haven't got a final quote back yet on the plaques, but when we put those trees in, those plaques will identify the type of tree it is, the year it was installed, and then a dedication to that city mayor, president, that, and then we'll have a map eventually that has a route in the downtown that'll not only be for identification of the trees, it'll be identification and acknowledgement of the past presidents. So not really to the point of having anything for you on that yet, because I don't know how many trees I can put in, but.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions?
I guess I just have a comment along with that, the Walk of Presidents. And I think I showed you, Mr. Hadley, a city I was in where they put up plaques that had represented the old construction in town to the new construction. It was kind of a comparison as you walk through the city. They had these plaques, and they had basically a plaque that depicted on the top of it like what the city used to look like when it was first constructed, and then currently, kind of a comparison. And it was kind of a neat little thing to see just how the city has progressed. And I think that's for something too, as you're doing like a walking tour, you could walk to a corner and look at this plaque and say, well, you know, the Elks building's still there, but what around it has changed and over time. And you know, it's just another a little point for people to see how your city's progressed.
No, and I think that's a great idea, and I think we're looking at some of those improvements maybe in mid-block. Mr. Kessel, I think, has kind of adopted the art slash that portion of what we're going to do as far as improvements. I'd be glad to be involved and help with that, but with my limited budget, I'm not going to be able to do a lot of improvements with that, but we can certainly incorporate it. You know, that's a great idea to show the history and show, you know, where we were and where we are now, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And I, at one point, a couple years ago, I think even made a suggestion. Mr. Kessel and I saw we're in a city where they are wrapping the, you know, the green utility boxes to kind of hide the ugly green utility box. And I had made the suggestion at the time, why don't we take, you know, the museum center has all these old pictures of downtown Dickinson, and take those and use those as a wrap, because that would be also reflected. You could walk and see that utility box and see what the downtown looked like looking at that utility box compared to what it is now.
Has there been any discussion, whether it's trees or lights or whatever, with the downtown merchants about them agreeing to be assessed for some of this cost? You know, it would have to be a consensus thing, not a...
They're very well aware of this process and the project, because I go to all the downtown association meetings. They're totally on board, 100% with it. I haven't gone down the road of assessing the improvements
Well,
to
it
them at
would
this
seem
point.
that should be an open discussion. It benefits them
Yeah,
immensely, and like I say, I wouldn't want to force it on them or anything, but gee, for some pretty modest amounts of money, you could kickstart this thing a lot better than you're able to.
mhm.
Anything else? Look for a motion to adjourn. In a second,
Second.
we are adjourned.